to my channel. My name is Suzanne. I'm the owner of La Petite Whisk. I'm a pastry chef based in New Hampshire where I teach baking classes. So I actually wanted to create some videos, some baking videos for everybody so I can teach you guys some recipes and we can all bake together while we are stuck at home during this time. So the recipe that we're going to make today is called Wacky Cake. Now you might actually know this by other names. It's a pretty old recipe. I've heard it called like war cake or crazy cake. So this recipe I got from my mom. This was the cake that she made for everybody's birthday party. Every first day of school, graduation, everything. We always had Wacky Cake for dessert. And it's pretty fantastic. And why I wanted to make it today is because this is a recipe that you can actually create from ingredients in your pantry. It does not require butter, eggs, or milk, so you don't have to go to the store, which is pretty great because during this time, we don't want to be out and we don't want to be going to the store. So we are going to get started, but I'll go through the ingredients first of all. I want to let you know that I'll be telling you the measurements, but I'll be posting the recipe in the description below. So I've actually cut the Wacky Cake recipe in half because the recipe that my mom has always used fits a 9x13 pan. And while that's great for my family growing up, there was 8 of us, I have a family of 4, so I wanted to make a little bit of a smaller recipe in an 8x8 square pan because even though I love to eat cake, we are also doing a lot of baking, so I don't want to have as much cake on hand. So to get started, we go through the ingredients. So we have our flour, and this is just an all-purpose flour. It's not a bread flour, it's not a cake flour. And we have a 1.5 cups of flour that's going to go right into our sifter. And then with that, we have a cup of sugar, which is like 7 ounces of sugar. And this is just granulated sugar that's going in. And then I have 3/4 of an ounce of cocoa powder. Now, you might notice that there's 2 different kinds of cocoa powder out there. You can actually add either Dutch processed cocoa powder or the natural unsweetened. And I'm using the Dutch process. I like it. I feel like it gives me like a more of a robust chocolate flavor, and it's a little bit darker in color as well. So into that, we are going to add our leavener. So this is a teaspoon of baking soda. That goes in there. And then a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I love to use kosher salt in all of my recipes, so kosher salt goes in. All right. Now we are just simply going to sift right over our cake pan. And now you might have noticed that I did not grease this cake pan, and that's great. You don't need to. But we are just sifting all of these ingredients together, and the reason that we're doing that is because it combines them. But also you might notice, like with the cocoa powder, sometimes you get like those little balls, and we just want to break those up, kind of combine everything together. So we're breaking those up. All right. Sifted right in. So now we have that. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of mix it a little bit more so everything looks combined right into our cake pan. Making a little bit of a mess, but that's okay. All right, so now this is the cool part. Now we get to add our liquid ingredients. So our liquid ingredients in this cake, we're using vinegar. And this is a tablespoon of vinegar. So I'm using apple cider vinegar. You can use white vinegar. You could even, if you had like a really cool like fig vinegar, you could absolutely add that. You really just need an acid to interact with the baking soda because that's gonna give our cake a lift when it goes into the oven to bake, and it's gonna make it really nice and fluffy. I'm using apple cider because I have like 4 apple cider jars in my pantry, so I wanna use them up. The next ingredient is our oil. I'm using just like a canola oil, so you want to just use like a vegetable oil. I wouldn't spend the money and get like a really good olive oil in here unless you're making like an olive oil cake. So just a nice vegetable oil is totally fine. But what we want to do is we're going to create these little wells. And I remember doing this as a kid, like during brownies or whatnot, my mom would always have me like make the Wacky Cake. And you have to create 3 little wells in your cake batter. Okay. And in the first well goes your olive oil, or your canola oil, sorry about that. Olive oil on the brain. That goes in and it spills out of my little well, and that's totally fine. And then in my second little well, I'm gonna put my vinegar. Vinegar's in there. And then in the last little well, I am going to put my vanilla. And it's 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm just gonna, that's about a teaspoon, and that goes in there. Okay. Now, I am basically going to take my water, which is my other liquid, I'm gonna pour it right on top and combine it. Now, my mom always told me that you mix it with a fork. You can absolutely use a whisk if you want to. You can absolutely use a rubber spatula, but this is what my mom always said to do. So this is how I have always done it. And you basically just mix it together. Okay, so we have our cake all completely mixed. And now it's gonna go right into our oven, which has been preheated to 350 degrees. Now it's really important with this particular cake, because it's made with baking soda, that once you have it mixed, you actually have to get it right into the oven, because the baking soda reacts with the acid, which is the vinegar in our recipe. So it's already reacting, and we want to get this in the oven so that way it can get the lift as it's baking. But if we were let it sit, then the baking soda is going to react, and then it'll kind of die out. So it's not like a recipe with baking powder where you can actually kind of hold that over to the next day, that recipe, that batter. This one, you actually have to get it right into the oven. You want to put the cake in the middle rack for about 30 minutes, and I will actually rotate it about halfway through. And we will know when it's done, when obviously you'll be able to smell it. But you also, if you touch the top, it should feel springy, and then you can even prick it with a toothpick, and as long as it comes out clean, your cake is done. And now we wait. Okay, so our cake is out of the oven. It baked for like 32 minutes, and as you can tell, when I touch it, it springs back. It smells delicious, and I inserted a toothpick in it, and there were no crumbs, so I knew my cake was done. This cake, you could certainly eat it warm, but I would let it sit for, at least 10 minutes, just so it's not scalding hot. And also, this is a great cake that keeps for like 3-4 days. Just want to cover it, leave it out at room temperature. I kind of feel like the flavor is actually better the second day. And usually I will keep the cake in the pan and serve it right from the pan. If you wanted to bake this in like cupcakes or in a round cake pan and maybe like layer it, do like a layer cake, you absolutely can. You remember that we did not grease this pan, so if you wanted to make cupcakes or if you wanted to do like a round layer cake, then I would definitely like use a cupcake liner or use like a parchment paper, so that way you can easily flip it out. Also, with this cake, you can certainly frost it. Like you can make a ganache frosting, which is heavy cream and chocolate. But what my mom always did is she would just dust the top with powdered sugar. So that's kind of what we'll do. Dust it with some powdered sugar. Looks so good. All right, so good. Now, I didn't really mention it, but this is a pretty basic chocolate cake, and if you wanted to, you could really add different flavors to this. You could jazz it up. If you remember when I poured water on the top, you could instead pour cold coffee. When you add it to chocolate, it really kind of intensifies the chocolate flavor and makes it a lot more complex. So you could totally add coffee. You could even add like some liqueurs if you wanted to, like a raspberry liqueur would be fantastic, or an orange liqueur. So this is a great kind of jumping off recipe, and then from there you can customize it to kind of your own flavors. I know my mom used to omit the cocoa powder, and then she would instead add like cinnamon and cloves and nutmeg, and it would become a wacky spice cake. So it's kind of cool. You can do a lot with this. So let's get into it. Look at that. Oh my goodness. It is so dark and chocolatey. It smells so good. It smells just like I remember from my childhood. Yay! So I hope you guys choose to make the wacky cake. It's just a really easy but a great recipe. And again, like I mentioned, you don't need butter, you don't need eggs, you don't need milk. So hopefully you don't have to go to the store. Hopefully you have all of these ingredients in your pantry. So that's it for today. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe because I will be posting more videos, and let me know what you want me to bake. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. Stay positive, stay healthy, and please stay baking. Bye.